Bhavna, thanks for coming. So this talk sort of the seed for this talk started when my dear friend Jim, ex-boss, colleague, landscape architect, wrote to me a few months ago saying that he's coming to India to study urban resilience. And that's the first time I met Bhavna. She was here with Sandeep Virmani and Aditya Singh from Hunarshala. And I was trying to make that meeting for a long time. I met Bhavna through then. And I mentioned that Jim is coming, and I said I wanted us to have more of such dialogues. And last week we had 5 talks where we spoke on, where we shared, Jim shared, others shared, Vishwanath came from Bangalore. So we've been talking about this issue for a week or so. We also had Pratima Joshi come here and speak about her amazing work on Thursday. That was really amazing. And I felt that Bhavna and her work with Community Design Agency in Bombay would be a really good fit for this sort of series. And so that's why we have Bhavna here today. And she's come just to be with us. She's drove in the morning and she's leaving after this talk. So thanks, Bhavna. I'll just quickly introduce her for those who don't know her. Bhavna is an urban practitioner and a writer based in Mumbai. Trained as an architect, she works with the Community Design Agency, CDA, on projects that seek to improve the built habitat of some of the most marginalized communities, using participatory planning, action-led research, and advocacy. From working with street vendors to nomadic pastoralists, Bhavna has worked with diverse communities in both rural and urban areas of India. Bhavna is also a wonderful writer. You should read her work online. Just search for her name. A lot of articles will show up. She's also a poet, mostly spoken word in Hindi, which is my, I would say, I don't know, 5th language. So it's always amazing when somebody is fluent in Hindi and can express themselves in Hindi. It's like I just bow to that. So Bhavna, thanks for being here and sharing your work with us.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you, Khushru. I didn't drive myself. It was pretty comfortable coming here, so that was nothing. I'm just really excited to be. Also, I'm sitting with a room full of people after the pandemic for the first time. I've only been like talking on screen to Zoom, so it's just nice to be in this intimate setting. A little Khushru gave my brief introduction, but just to sort of sum it up, I grew up in Delhi. I studied architecture in Punjab, and then I was in Kutch for about 5 years. And Kutch was also the place where my actual education happened. I met all kinds of different people. My friend Aarti is also here. She's also has been a very great influence in terms of my own politics and how I see the world. And this presentation is about the work that I do with Community Design Agency, the organization that I've been working with for the past 4 years. I've titled the talk like engaging with informality because Khushru said that Jim was coming and he was interested in this whole idea of urban resilience around informality, and essentially the kind of work that we do are in informal settings and with communities which are considered informal, though as a practitioner I sometimes struggle to draw the line between what is considered formal and what is considered informal, because when you go and start studying informal structures, they're very methodical and they have their own way of working. So I think that's something that we'll discover more as we go. Oh, sorry. At Community Design Agency, our motto is that everybody should have access to safe, healthy, accessible spaces to live, work, and play. And this is what we do. We are a collective of architects, artists, engineers, social workers, community organizers, and it's a more multidisciplinary practice where we all come together and share our skills towards the problems that we face in the communities that we work with. So, this is some of our areas. We work on health and well-being, gender equity, social inclusion, youth and women's empowerment, education and climate resilience. Education, climate resilience is something that's, new. We're still like grappling with it also because in the last 4 years, the communities that we're working with are also getting impacted by a lot of disasters that are happening around climate, and they've been at the forefront, and we're still like as an organization that works on built environment, grappling with how do we equip these communities so that they can like be at the forefront of the climate resilience. So I'm going to talk about 2 projects here. One is a slum rehabilitation project and other is a neighborhood regeneration project. And why I chose these 2 projects is because they sort of speak to each other, because what we're learning from one project we're able to apply in the other. So this is the first one is a slum rehabilitation project based in Ahmednagar. Ahmednagar is a city 3 hours away from Pune. It's a community of 298 families. Which we are redeveloping, and then there is a neighborhood regeneration project which is in Mumbai in a neighborhood called Govandi, where we work with the public housing. If you're familiar with SRA, Slum Rehabilitation Authority built houses, so they build this massive colony of around 6,000 houses on a 5-hectare plot, and we are working with the people there to address their issues. We started with built environment, but the project sort of grew into something much more. So Sanjay Nagar. So to start with, how this project started was that we were in Ahmednagar and we went to see Snehale's work. Snehale is this another organization, and they work with women and children. They work with women and children in different slum neighborhoods. They also work with children of sex workers. They also do a lot of work around health of sex workers. And so this was a community where Snehale has this program called Bal Bhavans, where they build these childcare, daycare centers in a lot of informal communities. And our team happened to be there, and this was one slum which was the only slum in Ahmednagar which was on government land. So it was easy for this because if it was a private land, then it would have been difficult to buy land from developers. So for a pilot project of slum redevelopment, it made sense. And Snehale being plugged into the Ahmednagar Municipal Corporation, it was easy for them to convince them to sort of give the land to the communities to rebuild it. And the idea of starting this project was that while we were starting on this project, we were also starting on the project in Mumbai, which was already a redevelopment project which was built in 2008. And we thought that the approach towards slum redevelopment has been around individual houses, that okay, there are these 238 or like 1,000 families or 5,000 families that need to be housed, and how do we give them these individual houses? But when you go to a slum, you realize that they have really strong social bonds. They're communities, so you have to think of housing them as a community and not just individual houses which sort of take away from their social fabric, their close-knit structures, their culture, their tradition. So just Sanjay Nagar is one of the 22 slums in Ahmednagar. There are 973 residents. The data is from 3 years ago, so this would have changed now. There are 45% there are around 22 communities, including the Naidus, there are Muslims, there are Christians. So it's a very and it has a very interesting history to it. It's called Sanjay Nagar because the first set of inhabitants who came on this land were leprosy patients, and that time, I think in the 70s, the Indira Gandhi government ran a program to house the leprosy patients. And this is why that we thought that usually when you go and see slums are very, at least in Bombay, you see Khotachiwadi, there's a Koliwada, and the communities tend to stick together in most of the slums. But in Sanjay Nagar you have 22 different communities because it was leprosy that brought them together, not so much their religion and caste. So yeah, this is how it looks right now, a part of it. You know, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, everybody know what's lacking in a slum. But this is like this is also a very resilient community in terms of how they stand up for each other, how do they come together, so we ran a small, to understand how the community work while we were designing and doing a participatory process with the community. We designed a community radio program where we got voices from the community to talk about how, you know, what this neighborhood means to them. So it was very interesting, the different kinds of voices that came out. They were very proud of the fact that they went and did a dharna. Dharna is a strike at the local, because for the first 7 years they didn't have electricity. So the community got together and fought for their right to electricity. They remember when the first light pole came, how they fought for water, and this, you know, the spirit of struggle keeps them together, and they all like remember it fondly, and they want to hold on to the fact that they built this. You know, when we asked them about their first memories of Sanjay Nagar, so they said, you know, there was a lot of snakes, there were a lot of insects. We made this land cultivable. We made this is ours. So there was a really fond. There was an attachment to land, which was and that was what we as architects had to sort of understand, because initially they were not on board with the process. They were like, oh, because this was the 4th time an organization had come to do a redevelopment process with them. They had rejected the last 3 times somebody had come to them with a redevelopment plan, thinking that, oh, their land's going to be taken away. So it was very important for us to understand these social bonds and see how we can retain them, and see that how the redevelopment plan that which we were bringing was respecting their relationship with their land. There was something that was lacking. We kept going about like, okay, meeting karo, ye karo, get somebody to speak in Marathi, but something was not clicking. Like, so then what we did was, at that time, we took them to Hunarshala Foundation. So Hunarshala was our conceptual design partner at the stage, and Hunarshala had already done a slum redevelopment project in Bhuj. Where they had worked with 3 different slums under the Rajiv Awas Yojana scheme. So then we decided, okay, we made a committee which we call the slum committee, which is like a representatives from the community, and they said, okay, if you're not trusting us, let's just go see what it can look like. And that was the breaking point in the relationship, because when they met people like them who had gone through the process, they were like, okay, now it can work. Like, these people, they're like us, they are from our social economic background, and if they can understand, I mean, if it has been successful for them, it can be successful for. So I think that was when the project sort of like kicked off. And then the whole community, we got almost 100% participation in, like, all families came forward to say, yes, we will do it. I will just go back to, yeah, so when we were in, there was another in Bhuj when we took the families. So one was that they saw Ramdev Nagar, which was another slum rehabilitation colony. The other was that, the other challenge was that everybody wanted ground floor homes. They had this idea that, oh, you know, Majha Ghar, Majhi Jagah. That just, okay, we are ready, but just give us. But we didn't have so much. If everybody had to be given 33 square meters, you couldn't accommodate, and there was no. So we did this interesting exercise where we did like a 1-by-1 plan and gave that, okay, this much house you want, this is your room. Got everybody to sit together and say that if you can fit all the houses, we'll give you all the houses. And then for 3 hours they kept sitting, trying to figure out, like putting here, there, and then at the end it's just like, okay, now you can build G+2 because we can't do it. Yeah, so that was like, okay, that's how we reached the consensus that okay, we will build ground plus 2 houses. And the other, once this design process was happening, we're talking to the community. The community was so in Ramdev Nagar, which is the Bhuj experience where I have also worked. We realized that the elders of the community were very active. They were very active participants of that process in Bhuj. But in Sanjay Nagar, in this slum, because they were daily wagers, they were not able to give so much time. They were not very active. So it was looking like, they're coming, aap kar do. So it wasn't a very active participation. So we decided to have the community nominate community representatives, which we call, we call them by their short form CRs. They were young kids from the community who became, very point of contact between the social design teams from our side and the community. And it's been a tremendous learning experience for me personally, for the rest of the team, to see these kids grow. They've been working with us for like in 2018 the project started, so like almost 4-5 years. And one of them has graduated, one of them is sitting for their police exams, and the guy from the left, Rutik, he's a trans person, and he also like sort of came out of his closet sort of during this process, became like this very confident person going around, and he emerged as a leader of the project and his community through this process. And how we realized it was that when the pandemic struck, the community is full of daily wages, and they were badly, like, they didn't have, a lot of families didn't have food to eat, they lost their livelihoods. And this group just came about and took charge of the entire relief process. And we didn't train that, we were just building houses, but this just became like a byproduct of the process, that they became so empowered. They were going every day, distributing masks, getting food, trying to ration it within the community. So and their understanding of plans. There was this one meeting where we have this another senior social worker, Hanif ji, who's been with Snehalaya, he's one of the major parts. And there was some altercation, and somebody was not able to understand the layout of their house. And Hanif ji was struggling, and we were struggling, and Rutik just took the chalk from my hand and beautifully drew the entire house, and the community got it, and to scale. I was very surprised. I'm like, wow, like this kid can draw, like I can't sometimes draw plans to scale. So this group has been like a tremendous success for the project. This was that exercise where they were like trying to fit. This is from that meeting. And then so when we started designing, there was limited things that you could do in the plan, but still we wanted to give the families the option of living together. So we designed the building in the way that if they wanted to knock off some walls, like if the son and the father and the mother wanted to live together, they could combine their houses. Because we realized from the Mumbai experience that the way the Mumbai housing is designed, it has broken families, it has broken communities. Somebody is on one building on the ground floor, the other person got a house on the 8th floor. So we gave the communities a chance to, one is to decide your own neighbors, and also to decide like how do you want to live together as a family. So in one unit, we gave the option for people to connect their houses on top, so there are internal staircases, and that has been extremely, that is also one of the things that they trusted the process, because they could see that we are responding to their needs and their aspirations of how their families are growing. So this is the site plan. We have 8 building clusters, a total of 298 homes. Each cluster has its own little open area. So this is one of the first buildings. And then we've also designed like these smaller spaces where the community can, do their own a lot of families have animals, and it was very important that we keep like space for them to keep their animals, because in the Mumbai housing we have seen goats on the 6th floor. Yeah. And there is a lot of like, people are constantly fighting because the other residents are like, you can't keep the goat on the 6th floor, but the guys are like, but I have goats, where do I keep them? Edible gardens on, we're still figuring out the management and the maintenance of it, how the community is going to maintain it, but they already planted a garden in one of the first buildings I show you. So this was the unit, the cross section that I was telling you about, how one family has interconnected houses, and in one building there are separate houses of different people. So financing has been one of the challenges of the project, because the project was passed under this scheme called Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, under which you get a subsidy of 2.5 lakhs. And in 2014, when the scheme was out, the cost of construction was about 4.5 for the same thing. And now the cost of construction has gone up to 10, but the subsidy is still 2.5. So in this we have, we're trying like the 2.5 subsidy that's coming from the government under, then the community is also contributing 1 lakh. I'll tell you how they are doing it. Then we are also looking for philanthropic contributions, and then the city's contribution with the AMC, which is the Ahmednagar Municipal Corporation, is giving access to roads and electricity, though it's a pain to just get them to work. So we realized when we started working on the finance piece that it's important for their ownership that they contribute, and in our in the Bhuj experience was that they can contribute, because even though a daily wager ends up spending like up to 2 to 3 lakhs on their daughter's wedding or like something, so if they have to, they can. The problem was that we went to a lot of different banks. A lot of banks just do not have the mechanisms to provide loans to a lot of low income communities, because there is no bank guarantee. There is we went to even Groove Finance, ICICI. They just do not have the infrastructure and the capacity to create a loan product which works for these community, and that is one of the major reason that prevents a lot of these communities to access formal housing, because there are no financial means for them to do so. So we have partnered with this organization called Rangde. Rangde is a peer-to-peer lending format, where what Rangde does is if let's say you want to contribute, you have 50,000 rupees, you would want to invest in somebody, so you can go on their website, you can choose like, okay, there is a farmer in Assam who's looking, so you can directly loan your money, like lend your money to that farmer, and then Rangde ensures that she pays you back over time, and if she can't, then Rangde tells you that, okay, this is something that has happened, and they have a really high success rate. So the first 33 families of the first phase got loans through the format, which they're repaying right now.
And those are for the full value of their unit?
No, only 1 lakh. So 1 lakh would be 100,000, yeah.
So that might be
100,000 rupees.
so some percentage of
So when we started the project, it was so the cost of house that time was 5.2, out of which 2.5 was the government's share, the one was the homeowners contribution, and the rest the Curry Stone Foundation as a philanthropic organization was bringing in. But because of the pandemic and the project stretched, the cost of the house went on to, it became almost double because the steel prices increases, we had to leave the site, we had to do a lot of repairs. So this is the current cost of construction so far after the 33 houses have been complete, has been 10.35 lakhs for one house. Projected for, because we have to build 265 more homes, would be 12.25 lakhs, and then we have the social process and the design technical fee which we are bringing. So right now that's the first 33 houses have been complete. We are working how do we finish the project. So one is we're reaching out to a lot of CSR companies to come and take on the infrastructure and the social component. The government sadly hasn't paid even its 2.5. So we are also working with the government to get that money, and because of the delays, the more it delays, the cost of construction is going to be increasing. So we are that's been a major challenge financially. And what we've learned is that for slum redevelopment housing to work, you need a full ecosystem of different things where you have access to land, you have access to financial models, you have access to, so just designers can't do anything, a financial model alone can, and we feel that in India that ecosystem is missing for people to come together and do something into the informal housing sector.
Lana, sorry,
Yeah.
quick question. So these are all new construction in a separate site from where
No, the
those
same
families-
site. It's in situ.
So it's in situ,
Yes.
but it's, how does that work with the residents that are, do they have to relocate temporarily
So-
during construction?
Yeah, so the first 30, I'll just show you the buildings. Wait. So this is the first phase of the project that's being built. So this houses 33 families, and families have already moved. So when we were constructing this, only these 33 families were moved very close by
I see,
in temporary shelters.
I see,
And then after the construction was over, they moved back.
gotcha.
So you built this house exactly, this building exactly on the location where these 33 were living?
No, not exactly, because
Okay.
some of them. So why we chose this was because we did a whole neighborhood selection exercise with the communities, who wanted to live with each other. So there were some Muslim families who had links with Naidu community. They decided that we've been, because they've been nomadic street vendors, they're mobile street vendors, and they know each other for some 40-50 years, and they have really strong ties. So they were oh, we will live in, so those 27 families decided to stay together. Then this family, there are 33 homes, but family wise there are only 5 families who were but some families were there, but some were at other places also, and some families who were moved but haven't gotten a house in this. So that's also there, because there was some internal politics. So these are the full disclosure, the photos are staged.
What are the size of these houses?
So 260 square feet.
And that generous veranda all around.
Yeah. the veranda was very important to them. Like that's something like, because, and also it, the first, because how the building is designed, the veranda on the first floor is bigger than the veranda on the second floor, and the families were like, and in this building it could work out because the families are the same, so they're using both. But when we design the next set of buildings, we will have to figure out a way where everybody also gets the same length, width of the veranda. So I'll just go back to, yeah, so these are the, like I said, different funding. Aarti is also here, she's also helping us with the funding. So philanthropy, how like government subsidy, like we earlier, when the project started, the Ahmednagar Municipal Corporation was like, would you be interested like making sellable units? But because this is in an area where it's beyond this nala, it wouldn't have worked, and there was also not so much land, so we couldn't explore the excess FAR, FSI. Also, this thing works in cities like, let's say, Pune or Bombay, where you have like higher cost of land. So then your FSI is more valuable. In Ahmednagar, this FSI has no value. Like,
So how are you all bridging this 70% gap in funding?
so now we're reaching out to high network individuals, look CSR, foreign funding organizations. So a bit of like scrambling everywhere, scratching. Are you want to? Yeah.
CSR has been particularly challenging domestically. So domestically, companies can donate to housing, to slum redevelopment specifically. It's part of the Companies Act level. But the reality is that almost nobody is doing that. So when you go and approach companies, and I've worked in CSR myself, the thought process is pretty linear. People will say, "Arey, we don't fund housing, we fund education, we fund health, we fund," it's siloed out in a way where it's very hard to make the pitch that, housing is the fundamental right that opens the door to other rights. Like you have safe and secure housing, that's going to have everything. But so that's been interesting. We're just starting the process on domestic fundraising, but we're looking at both. We're looking at a mix of foreign and domestic philanthropy.
Is it, considering that 7 lakhs is the gap, is it possible to get a loan for the people and just get a financing agency to give them a loan for 7 lakhs?
They won't, depending on their income, they won't get a loan of 7 lakhs.
But if you mortgage the house?
So to mortgage the house, you need to build the house.
You are going to build the house.
But how will we build if we don't have? But who's going to pay for it? Even if you mortgage the house,
Yeah.
the families only will have to pay, right?
But it won't work out to something like over 15 years or something long term.
So, see, Rangde gives small, and then we've been talking to banks without anybody signing there because they don't have that capacity. So, how will, like, even if you have the house, the banks check your paying capacity? If they're still earning like 7,000 rupees a month, how are they even going to pay?
But what about some kind of banks or financial system, financial non-profits that will say that, okay, we'll give you money,
Yeah.
but you pay it back to us. So we're not losing our money. We're not donating our money.
Yeah.
We are going to ultimately, there are no organizations like that, like Grameen Bank and all, they don't
No,
do that?
Grameen, Grow Finance, they all like said no to the project for even 1 lakh. Forget 7 lakhs.
There is a concept of a stable job or employment.
Yes,
that
yes,
doesn't
yeah,
match.
yeah. You don't get like as in if you're working in an NGO and even if you're working in 25, you're getting 20, you won't get a loan on an NGO. Like banks are very, so it's been very, very tricky.
Yeah, it needs a capital infusion because there's a mismatch between the resident's ability to pay for a loan
Yeah.
and the actual value to build
Yeah.
this house.
Yeah.
And so there's just a gap there. It's
Yeah.
just the economic reality.
Absolutely.
And these families, once they get housed, in theory, they would be able to, from that stable foundation, they would be able to increase their earning power. And someday they could
Yes.
handle a higher mortgage, but this is sort of their
Yeah.
current reality, and there's a gap. So
Yeah.
then where does that money for the gap
And
come
it is,
from?
yeah, and it is not just centric to this project, but if you look at PMAY urban data, so it has 4 verticals. One is a subsidiary, like a credit link subsidy, in which, like, if let's say you are a first time homeowner and you are earning like less than like 10 lakhs, you can get a subsidy of 2.5. So whatever numbers that you see that the government is reporting around PMAY urban are those, because everybody is getting that. But the number of houses that are built in the vertical of slum redevelopment have been nil. In Maharashtra, Mumbai didn't adopt it because they had already an SRA, but there have been very, very few slum rehabilitation projects that have happened under the scheme because of the reason, because there is no way 2.5 lakhs. So for that, there's another vertical in the policy which tells you that a developer can come get like TDR on a different land, or make sellable units. But in smaller places like an Indore or a Bhopal or a Nagpur, where the land value is not so much, there is nothing for a developer to sort of come in and take that TDR. It works in Bombay.
If you have a graph, it's actually the more money you need, the easier it gets.
Yeah,
The-
exactly. Absolutely. So this is where we are. We're hoping we'll raise the funds and finish the project.
Beautiful, beautiful project.
No, it looks like something which should, by example, lead to funding
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
in.
So also we've been thinking of, like, say, a lot of organization who are funding in health. So what we did was we did a health survey of children in which we did with these young kids only, and they only went and did the survey on this app, and we looked at the findings and realized that in Sanjay Nagar the kids' weight, height, everything was much lower than the national average. So now, if a lot of foreign organizations are working around health, where trying to tell them that okay, it's okay, you can give them vitamins, you can give them injections, but until and unless their built environment improves, you will not see any change in health parameters. So housing, it's also this very unidirectional, a very limited understanding of housing, but like Aarti was saying, it leads to, it's a gateway to so many things.
Housing is part of health.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're also trying to see that if we can, turn the narrative around certain and hook it on these aspects of health, education, community well-being, and then can raise some
I
funds.
mean, just your edible garden scheme can
Yes.
actually translate into thousands of people.
Actually, yes. We also.
Money saved is not
Yeah.
actually gone.
Yes, yes. So 265 more homes. It's also an open invitation to all of you. If you have any ideas, know people, please contribute.
So, before you go to the next project,
Okay.
did you do a complete master plan for the whole community? Because the community is much larger, right?
So the
How many
community
homes in the-
290,
300 almost.
300,
Altogether, and
Yeah.
you built 26 right now.
33.
33.
Yeah,
So another,
another 265.
Okay.
Just over 10%.
Yes.
So did you, and that plan that you showed?
Yeah,
that was
that's the
complete
overall.
community.
Yes, yes.
How many acres was that land?
Acres is 2 acres. Yeah,
2 acres.
yeah.
So you're looking at 130 units an acre density.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've still managed to get good open spaces,
Yes. Yeah.
Is there a commerce component in the existing community? Are there
No,
little shops?
because the communities. So when you go to Ahmednagar, the community you have to like go almost a kilometer in on a very small road. So there are no commercial aspects for the community to explore there because it's so there it's only that community, and then there is this an open drain, like a big open drain going around, and then you have to cross the open drain to reach the city. So it won't really like it's slightly like it's in the city, but around there's not much for the commercial component to work.
And I suppose some commerce will happen within the community itself.
Yes,
Will
yeah,
happen in-
yeah.
Well, that's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
if there was, in the existing fabric, is there anything that?
So
is
there are
just,
there are these within the community. So there is this one community called the Junni community. They are actually Sikh Dalits who've been living there for, and the men there are welders. So they do like, and we also were working with, I was closely working with the community to help them set up a workshop within, but all of them are drunkards, so we didn't reach anywhere. So yeah, that the women are far more enterprising, like, so they also do, so the men work with like grills and the women do iron utensils. And they are far more enterprising. They sort of run the house, and the men only like mostly like drinking and maybe doing one job in like 2-3 days. So that's
In the beginning, you mentioned about you mentioned how the project got initiated.
Yes.
Who did the pull come from? Who did the community pull you guys in, or did you all push your services onto them? How did this project get started?
So it started because of Snehalaya. Snehalaya is our social organization, and also CBA was also starting, and then we were also keen on exploring. So
How did you pick this particular settlement?
yeah, like I said, because this was the only settlement on government land, slums that we mapped in the city. This was the only because land is in C2 is much more easier, because then people are staying there, they have that connection. Moving people would have been, and then securing a different land would have been a completely different
I
project.
think a lot depends on the success of this.
Yes.
Because if you have this success story, I'm sure some of the remaining 22 who
Yes.
are private owners
Yes.
will look at it and see as a
Yeah.
obvious way of going about
Yes,
it.
yes. Hopefully that's the hope. Yeah. Okay. Should we move on to the next project? Okay. So like I said in the beginning, this is the neighborhood regeneration project in Mumbai. We've been working in this colony. It's called the Natwar Parekh colony. It's actually called a compound, but after working with, because compound, the word comes from Natwar Parekh is a big builder in Mumbai, and this used to be a compound for his shipping component. And how this, just to give you a brief of how this colony came about, is in the early 2000s, the city of Bombay got a whole lot of money from World Bank to upgrade its infrastructure. And that upgradation meant a lot of families and who were living, let's say, upgradation of roads, building of flyovers, replacing of railway lines, and to be able to do these upgradations, the city would have to displace a lot of people who were on those pavements or along those railway lines, and then it didn't look good on World Bank's portfolio that they're giving money, and then a whole lot of these people, like lakhs, and almost 2.6 lakh families were displaced. So they gave money to the city. So let's say, okay, take this additional money and build houses for the people who you are displacing. So the city decided to make these really large public housing settlements in Govandi, which is in the M East ward. If you do like a quick search of M East ward in Mumbai, you will see like it has the worst poverty index, it has the worst air quality. It's basically one of the most problem ward for the community, for the city of Mumbai. And so this is what they did. They made like there are these three large public housing colony in Govandi itself. One is Natwar Parek, other is Lallu Bhai, and then other is PMG, where you have, I'll show you a map, which is, so this is what they built.
Is that a built photograph?
Yeah, that's a screen grab of,
Oh my god.
yeah,
How many floors?
7, G+7.
What's the population? 6,000 apartments
Yeah,
in 12 acres.
yeah.
What's that number?
In 6 hectares, yeah,
Okay.
212, yeah.
So 6.1, 2.2
Two.
into 12, so that's about 14 acres, 15 acres.
Yeah.
When was it built?
In 2005,
2000 plus per acre.
Wow.
so it's 5,585.
So there is no upper limit in terms of.
So what the city did was they gave these developers, they relaxed the bylaws. So if you followed even if you are a terrible architect, if you're following certain bylaws, you would
Can't go
not.
above so
Yeah,
many
you
floors,
can't.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't build that kind of density. But what the government did was they relaxed those norms so they could build like how it's built.
445 units per acre.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously, you can see it. It's
You
a
can
lot.
see, yeah, it's like somebody just so what our
You can't put one block in.
So they did this, and then what did the developer get?
so developer got like some land
400% of the cost.
and land in South Bombay to build.
Government land.
Yeah, he got TDR.
Who was the developer?
Natwar Parek.
So there are no norms for this?
So that's what. So the norms were relaxed. They created special norms to build these.
It
Both
was a, it
not
was
good
a,
into accepting.
it was a deal. They cut a deal,
Yeah.
and it was shady,
Yes.
basically.
But if they had gone, if they anyway going G+7,
Yeah.
if they had gone 12 floors
Yes.
or 14 floors,
Mm.
they would have got half the footprint, and they could have had open spaces, they could have had ventilation.
But
What you didn't suggest that they would have doubled the number.
that's what they're doing. So what they're
The plan would
doing.
have looked the same for G+12.
So that's what they're doing right now. What they have done is, so here the unit cost is 225 square feet. Each unit is that. So now because this thing was, people don't have spaces. So now the new set of SRA buildings, what they're doing is they're giving 300 square feet, but not giving any open space. So exactly what you said, but nothing on the land. And they were all like allocated from the lottery system, and the way people tell their stories are so interesting. There's just like they said all the old people got homes on the 7th floor. It's just like कि वो एक बार ऊपर चढ़े फिर ऊपर ही चढ़ गए. Because what I'm saying is that a lot old people were, so they said they just went above only after that. They couldn't come
went up
back.
and then they stayed up
They
forever.
stayed up forever.
We're gonna help
Yes,
you.
there are lifts. So, but when 2008 was the time when first set of families were moved, and so this scheme is a pretty complicated scheme. So one is that yes, you get a house, and after that, once you get a house, each building is supposed to set up a cooperative housing, which nobody told them about. That you have to like set up, and once these guys have moved, and then MMRDA realized that okay, now we have to, who's going to maintain these buildings. So then they set up a social development cell to help the families, and according to the scheme, each tenement gets 20,000 rupees as a maintenance cost. So that comes out to be 19 lakhs something, which MMRDA, which is in a joint account between the cooperative housing and the MMRDA. and the system is so bureaucratic. This is their own money, but they can't access
they
it.
can't get it.
They can't get it.
It's designed that.
Yes.
The cooperative should have happened as the first step.
Exactly, before they moved in. So now there are 61 buildings, but only 32 buildings are registered cooperatives.
And non-functional.
Some of them are functional, some of them have, because we've also been working with them to understand their finances. But it's been like what, 14 years now, so they have also upskilled themselves to work. Some buildings work, some buildings don't. But it's, at the end of the day, it's also a voluntary exercise. It takes so much effort to run a cooperative, and they're just expected to just run it.
So Ali Asgar here is asking how many lifts are there in each building?
So you see, I'll just tell you. Okay. So this is one building which is like A, B, and C.
You mean ABC are connected?
No. So they're connected. There is a ground
Three
floor.
floors.
There are. Yeah. So one building has 3, and each one has 1 lift. So there's 1 lift here, 1 lift here, 1 lift here. And they're connected on the ground floor, but not on the top.
You have people living on the ground floor too.
Yes.
So can you go back to that previous slide?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's happening here?
So what has happened is that this particular building, so B is a registered society, and C, this is the C. This is building number 6C. These are what they call ghuskhor. Now, which is very like, I don't know, everyone is an encroacher, but within them they have this. So a lot of, I feel there was something between the official, lot of families who didn't get a house, they were angry, so they just like broke in and occupied those houses. And they have occupied it for like 7-8 years now. So now MMRDA, what they should do is just legalize their tenements, but they're not doing it. And there's just a lot of anger between. So, and also a lot of families use this, look at it as a very transitional space. So they don't care about, they throw garbage. So garbage is a really like, you enter and every lane is like garbage.
Between two buildings is the garbage.
Yes. And once initially,
That's because there's no pride of ownership.
there is no pride of ownership, then there are systemic issue. So according to the scheme, which is the Dattak scheme, which the BMC runs, where basically it awards tender to self-help groups to clean, so that cleaners can form their self-help groups, and like then they award tenders that okay, these many self-help groups will have the responsibility of cleaning this area. Now here, according to the scheme, there needs to be 35 workers based on the population and the area to clean every day. 6 people show up because a lot of money gets siphoned off. There are a lot of
10%
a lot of middlemen, like, and like what do you do? So yes, the one is like you said, no pride, no ownership. Then there are these systemic issues. The other thing is now when they were on the pavement, the electricity, there was no electricity, there was no water fee, like, so they were just, but they were still close to like a very important commercial areas where they were getting work. Now in the last 4 years, connectivity to the area has increased, but when they moved, it was still like back of beyond. The train station was away, the buses were not proper to take them to their previous areas. But the cost of getting a house, which nobody talks about, also increased. They had to pay property tax. They had to now pay bills for their common areas. They had to pay money to run the lift. So, and as even functioning societies are like, oh, the families can't give more than 200 rupees a month. But sometimes in like there are months where your electricity bill is only like 37,000 for the building. So then so they're really like struggling on all fronts. And then we're like, okay, like, you know, they're frustrated, they're going to put the garbage. And now there's this another interesting hypothesis this one BMC officer who runs the solid waste department had was, they say that, and also 225 square feet house, in some houses up to 15 people are living in 225 square feet. Yeah, 15. I've seen like they have like these bunk beds and they use so they have like that's the only good thing in the building, that it's almost a 5.5 feet wide wide veranda. So you will see like, you know, you'll like line in queues, rows, people are just sleeping outside because they don't. So that guy said that imagine 15 people in a house, the amount of garbage they're generating, where will they keep it? And how many times will the collection happen? So they like dump it down. So, you know, as architects, when we first entered, we were like, oh, how do we clean these? You know, the first is like, you know, as somebody who's done anything specially designed, just like, oh, let's clean it, let's make it. So we were thinking very visually, like, so we ran like a lot of mapping exercises with the community, did a whole lot of cleanliness drives. But after like few months, everything would like go back to. And then we were getting frustrated, okay, why not it's happening? So then we started understanding like these different kinds of issues of why this wasn't happening, why people weren't like, what will drive that behavior change and what is making it happen in the first place. So in the last like 5 years of working with the community, these are the areas that we have sort of not look at it as a built environment issue, but then with the community we mapped out, okay, these were the issues that were, and then see that if one leads to a built environment solution or not. So one is health and sanitation, like, because lots of, also this particular neighborhood, there is a report I can share with all of you later. The TB rate, tuberculosis rate in the community is 3 times as high as the rest of. There was an IIT Bombay report, they did a study in 2016 where they found, and especially the middle lanes where you see where they're like their buildings on both the sides, and houses which are from ground floor to 4th floor, because they absolutely do not get any sunlight and air ventilation. Then we worked with young adult isolation and gender exclusion, education equity, informal livelihoods, and identity and self-determination, because this is what has come out while we sat with the communities doing different workshops, which were initially oriented around design, but it led through these issues from them. So talking about health and sanitation, like we said, like why do they, so we realized that just doing cleanliness is not enough. So we came up with this exercise of, using installing these common bins in the common area for at least the wet waste. So and all kinds of different issues came up, because this one guy, he's like, I'm not going to put my waste there because that guy is also putting and he eats non-veg. And then we're just like, but everything is going to the same garbage.
What was the PMC guy saying you were about to tell us?
Oh,
Solid waste.
so he was saying that because the families are huge and they have smaller space, they don't have space to even keep the garbage inside for 24 hours. So, and then we realize that the community comes together, so they're bickering about, oh, there's kachra, but they like these events where they like to do things together. So we created like this whole that, okay, why can we celebrate garbage? can we create something positive around it rather than, because they'll be like, oh ye factory hai, this is the woman who puts it, like, you know, it becomes, so we said let's like do something celebratory around it. So we painted, like we created like these garbage corners points on every floor, got kids to paint it. And we did this because it's a predominantly Muslim colony, and we did this before Ramzan. So whatever you do, and we included the local Maulvi to sort of said, you know, you also start telling people that to participate because they listen to him. And whatever you do before Ramzan, they will, because it's a holy month. It's just like, okay, why don't you know, start something new, start something positive. And this was very successful. We ran this program for 3 months in 10 buildings, and then we saw that there was a noticeable decrease in garbage in the lanes below. So that was the lane, and then we did like a quick intervention and created like this social space between the colony.
Wow.
So this was in December 2019. On Christmas we did like a small opening, and the community started calling this space the garden. Everybody was coming, but wait for it. Then the pandemic happened and then because everybody was at home and this was the only space which was clean, a lot of kids started coming, and the elders were frustrated that they don't have work, they're stuck in these small houses, and then there are these kids below like doing like all kinds of, and they got frustrated and started throwing water on the kids to make them go away. They started throwing water on them, took all the plants, took all the benches, just destroyed so that they could sleep in peace. Yeah, so this was another, before nobody knew pandemic was coming. So before this, the next Ramzan was coming. The first exercise was in 2019 Ramzan. In 2018 Ramzan, our plan was to do similar interventions in 10 street, and we called the event Dawat-e-Iftar. It means feast on Ramzan. So iftar is the thing where they fast for the whole day, and in the end everybody comes together and feast. So we said that okay, why we will convert 10th Street and the entire community will come together and break fast. And this was the meeting which we had, and then a week later everything was shut, and then this street also. But after we came back, we sort of picked up where we left, and we said that okay, that was a very quick intervention, and now we said why can we work closely with the community to see if we can design the street as per their needs, like so we did like demographic surveys within each building to understand which building had more kids, which building had more elderly, and according to that we designed. So there was one with like more youth, so we and in this we partnered with BMC. We're still like after them to get equipment and benches. So this is, and then we did like workshops in front of each buildings. We laid out their street, and we made these placards which like wish list, like there was a swing on one card, there was a badminton racket on one, on like, you know, different things that, and then asked people to pin up where they would want it. And this kid, I've put this photo because his name is Rehan. He's 11 years old, and he put a basketball on these two spots, and then we asked everybody to explain why they're putting what they're putting. And this guy's like, I'm putting here because there are these boys who do a lot of smoking up. So if we put this thing here, they will go away because we will occupy the space. So like this is the, you know, the plan we did for the street. We have done the paving, but we are waiting for the equipment and the benches from the BMC to come to sort of start it. And then right after the paving, the monsoons happened. So now after the rains, we will do, this is just a window. Now coming to young adult isolation. While we started, initially we worked with a lot of elderly. So like when we were doing cleanliness drive, we were mostly doing with women. We were mostly working with young people, and then we thought that because they can't give so much time, it's also important to understand what the kids, the young people of the community are feeling. And that was also a turning point for us to understand and sort of pivot our programming, because we realized that for a lot of elders in the community, this is still a step up, because they were born on pavements, they didn't have access to toilet, they didn't have access to electricity. So for them, you know, there is still a lot of pride in this one house which they own. But a lot of young people who were either very young when they moved or have been born here, they feel very excluded, because then they are going out in the world, they are staying in M East Ward, they are being looked at like, oh, you live in like a banished area, as people say it. So we organized a meeting, and this one guy said that, you know, when we go out, we do not tell people that we are from Govandi. We tell them we're either from Chamber, especially when we're applying for jobs, or especially if we want to, like, we don't invite our friends home. We don't tell them that we live here, and especially Muslim, because this one guy said that अगर मैं मुसलमान गोवंडी का मुसलमान हूँ तो मुझे जॉब नहीं मिलेगी. Like if I'm Muslim from Govandi, I would not get the job. Like they were very like strong reactions. So then we thought that, okay, how do we start working with this group that is feeling so excluded? So because it's a Muslim community, it's also very conservative. Boys and girls hardly talk to each other. Like there's always some kind of scandal or the other happening. So we started with this safety workshop that we did. We gave a group of 10 girls and 10 boys from different buildings a map, and this was the first time they were looking like at a map of their neighborhood, like trying to understand. And especially and then we did a walk with them, and some of the girls were doing the walk for the first time, because they said that, oh, we just live in our buildings and we just like go out otherwise we don't go out. And so then we said, okay, you sit with it and then mark where you feel safe and where you feel the most unsafe. And we did it with both men and women. And it was very interesting because where the girls had marked that they felt the most unsafe, the boys had felt the safest. So, and then we make them sit together, and initially, like men are, they were like very, oh, they don't know, they're just saying. So, but then we had to like facilitate a conversation. That was the first time they started talking to each other as okay. And then that led to this, so we then helped them. So like, do you want to, like a loose organization, come together, do something from your community? And within the same meeting, because they had a lot of bad things to say about the neighborhood, and then in one workshop what we did is that, why don't you list out all the good things about your neighborhood? I'm sure there are good things. And once they started saying the good things, they couldn't stop. So there was still like a lot of unearthed pride and attachment to the community, which they don't have space to sort of express. And so then, this group organized themselves around this name called Young Sangathan, they call them. They're like a loose, like 20 to 24 youth there are. And then we said that, okay, what would you like to do about your neighborhood? And would you like to transform certain spaces with us, because we can help you? So they did this whole like a survey and chose a spot, saying that, okay, here there's a lot of, because Govandi is also known for a lot of drugs. A lot of kids are into drugs, and that is what sort of like pins it down when you go out, like, because anywhere you ask in Bombay, like that's the neighborhood where you get drugs, where a lot of drug dealers are, like a lot of crime. And so this group was also like cooperating with that feeling. And so they chose this spot which was known for its, where people would go and like do drugs. And this was so we said, okay, let's do something quick. And this was right after this was in early 2021. So we were thinking, we also wanted to come back and do something quick that builds their morale, which was down because of the pandemic. So So we wanted to do something like which we'll do in like 7 days straight. So they chose this spot, we designed a mural with them, painted it, and this is what we did. And then we told them to sort of document it for the like how it's used. And in we have a group, and in one of the groups this one girl sent a photo of 2 women sitting here at 10 o'clock, and they were so happy. They're just like, this has never happened, like and this is one spot that's maintained so far, like they have taken full responsibility of nothing has happened to it. So this was another mural that then the first one came, then they wanted to like paint something else in the center of the neighborhood. So this is what we did in a central space in the community.
Translate that.
Pardon?
Just translate.
Yeah, so ये हमारा घर है means this is our home.
Nice.
And the previous one, okay, yeah, I forgot to tell that story. That means Haq se Govandi. It's not exact translation, but it would be Govandi my pride. Because in this group, we met a rapper.
Right.
Yeah. We met a rapper who had created a rap song called Haq se Govandi. Like Govandi my pride. He had written and recorded that that rap song, and then we were like, oh, why did you think of it? And he's like, I wanted to create something for my community. And this is, he was 23 years old, and it was very inspiring because he worked as a Swiggy delivery boy, saved the money, then created this song. So there was a lot of pride. So we also wanted to like use that and put it like, so his words. So he was really happy. Then while we were working, so because painting is just such a fun activity, a lot of kids come, so we started like then interacting with a lot of kids, and we realized that in the pandemic a lot of children had dropped out because especially multi-children home where families were earning less, they had to prioritize the education of the elder ones. So the children aged between 6 to 12 or 13, a lot of them dropped out. A lot of them were enrolled in the local BMC schools, the government schools, and the government schools just did not have the infrastructure to offer digital classes. I decided, oh, what do we work, how do we like work with this? And then we thought that, okay, why don't we create a library for children, like why can, and at that time we were also thinking of, because there is not a lot of open space outside, how do we create indoor public spaces where community can come and feel safe? So then we started working on this whole library idea. We partnered with this organization called Bookworm. Bookworm is a Goa based organization, and they do they specifically work on libraries, how to run community children's library. And because we were like, who's going to run it? We won't be able to run it. So from that young Sangathan group, we selected 4 people who were really interested in running the library, and then Bookworm trained them. They even went to Goa for a training. They did some workshops in the community, and I was telling Jim the other day, so because for us, I think in this project, if we can reach the design stage, that means the project has been successful. Because there is just so much that it takes to sort of reach that stage. And so for the library, we identified a space where we wanted to build it, and it took us 9 months to just get allotment. That just meant every month just going and just sitting and just like and when we tell this to people in Bombay, they said, you got a good deal. You never get anything from MMRDA in 9 months. And
This is in the community.
yeah, I'll show you in the community. So, and this was the day we got the keys after 9 months. So the kids celebrated, and it was Diwali. So they did this pop-up themselves and this is they did a Diwali pop-up, and it's a Muslim community. So it was a very like exciting thing for us, that how these barriers are breaking. And yeah, this is the library. It's in one of the buildings, building number 16.
So is it a former residential units?
So these,
Or-
the units on the ground floor are mostly so each building has about three rooms which are allotted either for your building office or for an Anganwadi, which is a daycare center. So this was for a daycare center, so it made sense to use it for a library. So this is the library now. You know, it's become a very active space for
Each
kids to
building
come.
has these 3 rooms.
Every building has these 3 rooms.
Are they all used right now?
Not all are used.
So even though they were available, it took so long to get.
Yeah, because they were like, oh no, we have kept them for people who will be dislocated from metro construction. Now, when will that metro construction happen? When will you relocate them? And also, we were very keen. We wanted to have this. We wanted 2 rooms. That was also long because just one. This is because we have knocked that central wall and combined 2 units to have like a longer space. So that also took long because it was one room, they could have given it anywhere. So, and now this is the team, not the woman in the center. She's an author who visited our library, but they are from the community. They're all like doing their studies and they all volunteer their time. Their college is from 7 to 11 and every day 11:30 everybody is there, and it's this space has been a very positive has a very positive impact on the community. I should have talked about it. Should have talked about it earlier, but so working with street vendors is actually one of the first things we did in the community, because we started working in CDA was formed early 2018, and I was like, my colleague Shashank and I were the first 2 people to join, and that's when we started working on the project. And within like a week of 10 days of my joining, there was an altercation between the street vendors and the authorities, and the MMRDA, which technically should not own the land but still owns the land on which the building is, decided to ban. Now, we could challenge the there's no legal structure to how they can ban it, but they don't have the means to sort of go and fight it in the court. But anyway, they banned all the street vending on the streets, and there are about 150 street vendors in the community because there's a population of 30,000.
Those lanes.
So there's a central lane.
Got it.
Yeah, the main central lane, which is 9 meters along that, and then there is some open space. So
Is that a throughway? Is that a public road that goes through, or
No.
just for the community?
For the community.
So why would the MMRDA have a problem?
So technically, MMRDA still owns the land. So, and according to the structure, all the co-op housing societies need to come together and set up a federation. Now the federation has been set up, and MMRDA needs to transfer the land rights to the federation. But that's not happening because they want to exercise control.
Well, source of income.
Yes, absolutely. So then, and I had worked with street vendors in Bhuj in the past, so we saw that, okay, how do we can we do something and can we work with them? So the first project was we started working with them to understand what were their issues, how were they working, what were the altercations, what were the problems. So, we did a series of workshops with them to understand, okay, how they were using space, and also what were their rights, what were their regulations, because now street vendors are protected by law under the Street Vendors Act, which was passed in 2014. And they obviously did not have an idea about the act. So we partnered with Yuva to organize a whole workshop around the Street Vending Act. Then we also helped them formalize themselves as an association, which they formed. They call themselves the Ekta Hawkers Association. Help them make a rule book of how will they work together, how will they, and also the idea of sharing of space. That took a lot of time because it was very interesting in one of the meetings when we were in the process of formalizing what this association would be. A lot of street vendors were of opinion that we will only street vendors who own a house in the community should be part of the association. So we were like, all of you have come from pavements, but the moment you have land tenements, that othering also happens so quickly. And then I was like, I'm a renter. Your kids are going to different communities, different areas, so should they not like, and then that took some time, and then they finally understood, and then they ended up electing a president which was a renter. So
In spite of this, they do have to pay hafta, treatment.
so here, because MMRD doesn't, this is not a public road. So BMC takes hafta, and that was also very interesting because according to the Street Vendors Act, though it's a very radical act, it also like leaves a lot of like for arbitration, because technically the land belongs to MMRDA. It is not a public road. So if a street vendor is not sitting on a public road, then the Street Vending Act doesn't have any provision to protect him or her. They can't protect them because it's not a public road. And because it's not a public road, whatever, so according to the Street Vendors Act, every ward needs to have a town vending committee. And the town vending committee needs to do a survey. First, they need to do a survey of all the street vendors in the ward, and secondly, come up with a town vending plan of which zones will be. In Bombay, though hasn't done it. Only 2 cities in India, Ranchi and Delhi, are the only 2 cities. Delhi also very few places, but Ranchi is the only city to adopt and do this. But rest all the cities are far behind. So these guys were not even included in the survey because until and unless that survey happens, BMC cannot remove anybody. But here BMC is not, which is the main legal body to take care of all the street vending. MMRDA acts as a individual landowner, that okay, you know, like a private landowner, this is my land, I'm going to make rules. So that had been challenges, but so in the process what we figured out that there will be a lot of negotiation in the process. So the street vendors also learn to sort of negotiate with the community, with the authorities, organize themselves properly along the road, move behind, let people pass. So because since there is no legal provision for them to get rights over the streets, so negotiating with the authorities was the best way we could come up. So this was like some of the workshops we did, and this is the rule book that they have, like each of them have in Marathi, Hindi, and also we also have it in English. So they have like set of things that how do they do conflict management, how will they ensure if new vendors come, how are they included in the association. Yeah, and this is the last part. So when we were working on a lot of art initiatives, a lot of like with youth, we realized that identity was coming out to be such an important part. Like it, especially for the youth, it was very important for them that they be seen in a different light than they are. So we came up with this idea of doing the Govandi Arts Festival, which we are going to do in February 15th to 19th. It's a neighborhood level community arts festival where we have mentorship programs for about 45 youth, where we are teaching them theatre, public art, film, photography and rap, and they're all learning from one mentor each, and at the festival everybody will come together and showcase them. And our idea is to transform those lanes into exhibition spaces, because 2 lanes we have already paved, and then we're going to work with some architects to see like if we can create exhibition, then those lanes turn into film screenings and showcase for rap and theatre. Then we are inviting artists to do installations, and then because the project is funded by the British Council under this grant called India UK Together, and they had this component, the grant was under we could only get the grant if we collaborate with a UK based artist. So we are collaborating with these UK based procession artists, and what's it called? They make these, you know, very huge lanterns and puppets, and they walk with it. So we're going to create like an art procession in Govandi on one of the days, like
In
one
this community.
in this community. So one we'll do within the community, and one we will do like, let's say in a Kolaba or a Bandra. So you say like Govandi comes to Bandra, or Govandi goes to, you know, to say, so like, you know, these kids will make and showcase themselves in this community. So I just wanted to end with showing you a little trailer that we had. Is there? Thank you.